What's going on? What's going on? Hopefully you guys can hear me good out there. I'm driving, going to go take care of some business. Just had a couple of thoughts I wanted to get off my head. So, first and foremost, let's just get right into it. We live in a world that is crazy right now. And what I mean by that is that the rules of engagement as far as how people are dealing with each other is just broken all the way around the board. The respect level between men and women and this non-traditional awakening is just beyond belief. And it's like, it just like being at the age that I am is like, I've seen things shift so much to where comedy, how we knew comedy, has changed. Thoughts of how we seen life, how we seen roles, how we had expectations of each other have changed. They have shifted drastically into another direction. And, you know, everybody can point the finger at what they feel like the cause or what the catalyst was that led to the reason why we are what we are today. That's not the point that I want to make. The point that I want to make is when is enough enough? When has society had so much of the negative aspects of everything that is brewing behind closed doors to where we actually will stop, pump the brakes, look at the data and say, you know what, this ain't working. The one thing about America that, as I knew it growing up, was always that it was called the Great Experiment. And the reason why I believe that it was always called the Great Experiment is because we constantly try things. We constantly push the envelope into a different direction. It's like, you know, we were ultra religious at one point in time, and then we moved into more of a secular way of life as far as open ideas, as far as sexuality, as far as, you know, investments, monetary. You know, there's very little that is traditional these days as far as what's being broadcasted by and large through, you know, most of the mediums. Listen, I'm perfectly okay with people experimenting with life, but at the same time, like, we have to sometimes be realistic that if it doesn't work, it doesn't work. It's not that it doesn't work because nobody's doing it right. It's because it doesn't work. It's a bad idea. No matter how many times that you try to push socialism, the idea that socialism is just not being done correctly is like, well, how many more examples do you need that it just might not be a sustainable system? How many more situations do you need to know that certain ways of life just don't produce good results? That the option to do does not mean that it's the correct thing to do. With given options, my car says that it can go 140 on the dash. Just because if I push the gas all the way down and it can go 140, that doesn't mean that I should exercise that option to drive it 140 miles per hour. I mean, some things to me is just common sense, that just because you have the option to do does not always mean that you should exercise that option. If it doesn't produce positive results, it's just that. It just is what it is. My thing is that we are headed in the direction to where more and more people are feeling lonely in rooms full of people. More and more people are feeling like they have to, like they're destined to fall under this special classification all to themselves, to where they can't be a part of society. They have to do everything under the sun under the guise of individuality. And the detriment of trying to create this false sense of individuality is causing people to become more and more isolated. And it's weird. You know, it's weird. Like, if you are in my age bracket as a millennial, and it's like, I can't speak for other generations, but being born in the 80s, growing up in the 90s, the 2000s, I've watched multiple hip-hop generations, fashion. I've watched, you know, the type of media, the jokes. I've watched everything that has transpired, politics. I remember when the world was a certain type of way. I can remember the world before the 9/11 situation, and I've seen the effects afterwards. Obviously, many of us have lived through the pandemic situation and came out of it, but just hitting these major timelines through life that I have lived, and you've seen the major shift that the world has made since then. The world is spooky right now. It's very spooky. And I don't understand if people really get it, or if they have such a short memory that they don't understand that we continue to push the envelope to the point to where normalcy is almost impossible to achieve. Now, my thing is like anything else. It's always somebody who saw the bigger picture that were the influences for change. And for me, it's like, I get it. Change is inevitable. It's necessary. However, sometimes we can push the envelope so far that what we ultimately end up doing is creating a society of people who can't take pressure, a society of people who don't believe in working hard for anything. You create a culture of entitlement. You create a culture of people who don't think that you have to put anything in to get anything out. You know, it's just like the whole concept of reap what you sow. If you don't put anything in the ground, nothing's going to grow there. So how do you reap a harvest that you've never sown seed into? You know, it's very simple. But sometimes it just seems way more complicated than what it is. You know, and then it's like you become more cognizant of things. And it's like, you know, I know this is a little bit off base, but, you know, I'll throw it out there anyway, too. You go to work. You work all day long. 40 hours plus a week. Pay your taxes. You beg for student loan assistance or other financial incentives. No dice. It's ruled unconstitutional. But then billions get sent abroad to assist other countries with redevelopment and war efforts and everything else. And you sitting here holding the bag like, how do we have enough money to pay for this? But then we have multiple trillions of dollars of deficit on loans that we're taking out from the Federal Reserve. It doesn't make sense. The world that we live in is not making sense. The math ain't mathing. A lot of things ain't making sense. And it's like, I don't know where we're headed. I just think that we're at a place to where those of us who have some semblance of common sense, we need to start putting our heads together. We need to start isolating ourselves from that situation and come to the realization that a lot of things are not for us. And in order for us to reap any true benefit, we have to start diversifying ourselves and moving ourselves into a sector of society to where we just don't operate within this thing anymore. And that's pretty much the message. It's okay to opt out. It's okay to say, nah, I'm good. I think that it's okay to say, you know, if that's what you want to do, that's perfectly fine. And I actually applaud you doing that thing that you enjoy or doing that thing that brings you joy, but I don't want to participate. I don't think that there's any sector of society that should make me feel as if I'm obligated to take part in something that I don't agree with. I shouldn't be obligated to pay a tax for something that I didn't opt into. I just think that when it comes down to the people who are running the politics, the people who are running the country, that we need to start really getting back to a position of home growing the people who we put in charge of what it is that we do. Because if we don't start putting the money and the energy behind the people that we want to choose, we're not going to get people who are representing us. But instead, we're going to continue to get the same thing, begging for crumbs from stuff that we're putting in. Like, imagine you raising your child, and then at the age of 10, you give your child access to all your finances, and then you have to ask them to do stuff for you with your own money. It's crazy. But that's what it's like dealing in this government. You have people who did not contribute, or an entity that does not reap or it does not create its own money, that takes our money, recycles our money, and then ignores us when it comes down to the needs that we have. It's a strange world that we live in, guys. I'm not going to continue ranting on this. It's like, I know I'm kind of all over the place, and this is just, the rant is just as confusing as the need for the rant. It's just, I don't know where we're going. I don't know where we're headed. I don't know what this life is intended to take us into. But I definitely feel as if we're in a place to where we need to start asking ourselves the common sense questions. Like, what the hell is going on? And how do we get ourselves into a place to where normal is the normal again? Anyway, this is Mike, a.k.a. Phil Jones, Extraordinary Man Podcast. I'm out, man. Peace.